On April 21st, 1838, John Muir was born in Dunbar, Scotland. As a young boy, Muir found a love for nature. His love for nature was so great that when his father asked him to cut down a tree, he would pray for forgiveness to God before doing so. In 1849, Muir, at age 11, got on a ship to travel to the United States. When they arrived in the U.S., John Muir's father heard about the good land in Wisconsin, so they set off for this new wilderness. While he was in Wisconsin, his love for nature grew while examining new plant species in this foreign land. He always seemed to have a greater appreciation for nature and all its beauty. Later on, after attending school at the University of Wisconsin, John Muir began to work in a factory. He hated being cooped up in a building, and that's when a terrible thing happened.
He was temporarily blinded in one eye, and that made him think about what was really important in life.
After regaining his sight, he had a turning point in his life. This was the 1,000-mile walk he took to Florida and further travels west, eventually ending up in California. In California, Muir grew in love with Yosemite Valley and all of its splendor. One thing that Muir started to notice was that Yosemite was being trampled down by the herding of sheep and cattle. This led him to think that these areas should be preserved for future generations. So he started a campaign for conserving nature.
His campaign to protect Yosemite Valley was probably the first thing that he really got noticed for. So they started to kind of follow what he was doing.
The Dial magazine, or Century magazine, were very popular magazines that he wrote for. They had very wide distribution throughout early America. And as a result, Muir became very quickly one of their favorite contributors to the writing trade, if you will. His writings began to alert people that there was no moving anywhere anymore. We were simply beginning to destroy all of the resources available to us, and that if we did not change our policies, that we would have simply wasted watersheds and food resources.
San Francisco was a growing city, and they were looking for a permanent source of water for the city, and they wanted to turn the Yosemite Valley, which is a very steep valley in the Sierra Mountains, they wanted to turn the entire valley into a reservoir for water that would be directed down to the city of San Francisco. John Muir got a lot of national publicity from his efforts around in saving Yosemite, and that, I think, established his reputation in the environmental movement. And the influence of John Muir, Yosemite was saved for the people of the United States and really people from around the world as a national park.
The founding of Yosemite National Park was kind of led the way to other campaigns that set aside other national parks. Sometimes John Muir is referred to as the father of the national park system, and he went on to other battles to protect areas like the Grand Canyon and and to set aside other areas in national parks that we all enjoy today.
Cities were rapidly growing, and there were many demands on natural resources. Many city officials were desperately looking for good sources of water and electricity. These officials needed to destroy some of the country's most beautiful landscapes. John Muir knew that he had to step up and save these amazing sites.
We had a completely utilitarian way of looking at nature in John Muir's day, and people didn't have this great appreciation for wilderness. And one reason why they didn't is because there was so much of it in those early days that people thought it would just last forever. And it's only when we start to lose things and we see that they're threatened to disappear forever that we realize how precious they are, and we want to save them.
I think he recognized that as the population grew, it was important to set aside some of these special places so all Americans could enjoy them. President Roosevelt kind of took notice about what John Muir was doing and decided he would like to meet this John Muir. He invited Teddy Roosevelt to come and, have discussions with him in the great outdoors.
Teddy Roosevelt decided that he would help John Muir. Together they fought in many battles to conserve nature, which led others to do the same. Despite what people think, John Muir was the one who really inspired Teddy Roosevelt and many others to conserve nature.
Hetch Hetchy was a gorgeous, glacially carved valley that eventually was inundated by the Tuolumne River due to the dam. It became a rallying cry for later conservationists.
In 1906, an earthquake and fire hit San Francisco. They desperately needed to find a good sources of water and electricity, so they pressed for the damming of Hetch Hetchy Valley. John Muir wanted to turn the Hetch Hetchy Valley into a place of tourism so that everyone could enjoy nature and its beauty. John Muir made pamphlets and articles that brought the attention of the nation. Many people started to write letters to Congress, stating that they should not allow the damming of Hetch Hetchy. Congress debated the value of scenery versus economy. Finally, they decided to grant San Francisco the right to dam Hetch Hetchy. Even though John Muir lost this battle, he made the nation realize how important it is to protect nature. If this battle would not have happened, the nation might never realize how important it is to save our natural resources.
And that last fight that he lost ended up, in a strange sense, ended up being as a kind of victory, because I sometimes wonder if the Park Service would have, if people would have been able to actually engender support for the Park Service being created in 1916 if the Hetch Hetchy Act had not been passed. Enos Mills is considered to be the father of Rocky Mountain National Park. Well, Enos Mills met with John Muir before he died and was very much influenced by John Muir. So John Muir and his life and his work fed into the creativity and the passion of Enos Mills, and Enos Mills was the father of Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado.
He and some other activists founded the Sierra Club. And one of the concepts that really still exists today in the Sierra Club is that it's really important for people to actually go and see a place and to become connected to the land so that they will be advocates for protecting these special places around the earth.
You can't really look at the history of conservation and not read something by John Muir. It's almost impossible.
Muir set aside more than 200 million acres of land for protection. He created 5 national parks, increasing the national parks they doubled them. And he also created more than 50 wildlife preserves.
John Muir set aside many national parks, but these parks did not have the same guidelines as the ones we are familiar with today. The guidelines back then did not have strict policies protecting the park. In fact, Hetch Hetchy Valley, which is inside Yosemite National Park, was dammed for government use while these policies took place. Because of this, Muir had an idea to form a linked system of national parks. Even though Muir died before he could see his national park system take shape, his teachings lived on to inspire others to form the national park system with strict policies. And now, we have over 365 national parks in the U.S., all because of John Muir. John Muir's time on Earth was not spent in an office or building. He was an activist. He was one of the few who really enjoyed nature and God's creations. He also realized that nature was disappearing as the world's population grew. He needed to tell others about the vanishing nature around us, so he started on his conservation mission. He wrote pamphlets and articles to people to spread out the word. These people learned from John Muir that nature is not everlasting. After John Muir died, many activists arose and eventually our national park system was started. This means that John Muir had accomplished his goal in showing others how beautiful nature was. During Muir's lifetime, he redefined how we view our world and how we live our lives. He has taught us not to view nature as something to be exploited, but as something to be respected, admired, and preserved. This is one of the most important teachings that anyone has ever taught us. We are trying to do what John Muir had envisioned, and we have made big strides in conserving nature, yet we still have more that we must do. We are trying to be more like John Muir, and we ask that you will too.
Imagine yourself in Hetch Hetchy on a sunny